Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are walking, well, metaphorically, the most emotionally charged steps of the entire Camino Portuguese interior.
The final leg.
The final leg, we are focusing on that crucial 24.8 kilometers that separate Padrón from the ultimate prize, Santiago de Compostela.
And this isn't just about distance.
No, not at all. This is where weeks of walking meet, anticipation, history, and a real spiritual climax.
It's a stage where every single kilometer seems to hold more historical weight than maybe the previous 50 combined. If you've spent weeks walking the quiet interior route, this final day is a massive shift.
A huge shift.
Yeah. Our material shows that this stretch is a hyper-condensed history lesson. Our goal today is to guide you through the topography, the cultural hotspots, and most importantly, point out why the historical layering here, those aha moments, are just absolutely unique right before you step into the cathedral plaza.
So let's start. We begin this momentous day in Padrón, leaving the center on Calle Doris. And almost immediately, the history is right there.
Instant.
The first geographical feature we cross is the Rio Sar. And once we're across that, we enter a region that feels like the ancient predecessor of Santiago itself, Iria Flavia.
And what's so important to grasp about Iria Flavia is its historical seniority. We can't just think of it as a small parish of Padrón today.
No, it's much more than that.
It was a thriving Roman city, and critically, it functioned as the episcopal seat, the center of regional Christian power all the way until the 10th century.
Wow.
So when Santiago became the established destination for the Apostles' Tomb, Iria Flavia sort of handed over the reins, but it never lost its profound historical roots. You're essentially walking through the original power center of the region.
That makes the presence of a massive cultural landmark there all the more profound then. Right in the middle of this ancient spot, the path leads us past the foundation, Camilo José Cela.
One of Spain's greatest 20th century writers.
Exactly. And the foundation is housed in the Casas dos Cuencos, which themselves date back to the late 17th century.
So you get this literary layer resting right on top of the ancient Christian layer. But the real convergence, the really mind-blowing part, happens right next door, in the Cementerio de Adina, where Cela himself is buried.
Okay, and this is where the analysis gets deep and why this stage is so unique. You have the, relatively modern resting place of a literary titan, but if you look closely, the cemetery itself preserves the remnants of something entirely different.
Something much, much older.
A Suevian necropolis that historians date all the way back to the 5th century.
Just think about the weight of that. When you are standing at the start of your final pilgrimage day, contemplating your own journey, you are literally standing above the graves of Germanic settlers from the 5th century.
Who predate the Camino itself.
By centuries. That is 1,500 years of layered human existence. Roman, Suevian, medieval Christian, and 20th century intellectual, all in one spot. It sets a really powerful, reflective tone for the walk ahead.
It has to change the way you view the ground beneath your feet. It transforms the experience from just a hike into, well, a historical meditation.
Right.
Now, moving into the practical realities of the route, because you can't just meditate on a Roman ruin forever. We do have to cross the N550 road.
Yes, and this is where the materials offer a crucial logistical nugget. Because the N550 can be busy, the ancient path is often mitigated by modern solutions. There's an option to take a specific detour, a remel, that goes off to the right.
And what's the purpose of that?
It's a route designed specifically to pull you, the pilgrim, away from the heavy traffic and reconnect you with that quiet atmosphere you've grown accustomed to. It's an acknowledgement that the spiritual path often needs a little protection from modernity.
And even after that, the historical echoes just keep coming, don't they? The path quickly passes the legendary ruins of Castro Lipario. This is a site just dripping in Galician legend, tied to Queen Lupa.
Queen Lupa, she's often tied into the legend of the translation of St. James's body. Sometimes she's a pagan queen who hinders the disciples, other times she helps them.
So walking past her supposed fortress, Castro Lipario, right at the end of the Camino, means you're walking not just through historical fact, but through the foundational myths that gave birth to the pilgrimage itself.
Exactly. It reinforces that the path is spiritual, legendary, and historical all at once.
And nearby, we also find the remains of the Castillo de Rochaforte, which is 15th century. It just reinforces this idea that you were moving out of that ancient Roman heart and into the realm of medieval power struggles.
It's the ultimate transition. You are moving from centers of established power, Roman, episcopal, medieval, into the rural heart of Galicia that sustains the region. And that transition really defines this next segment.
Transition is the key, because the topography changes so dramatically here. We leave those ruins behind, and the material describes the route running through this lush, nourishing valley.
And that valley is what supports the traditional rural texture of Galicia. This is where we encounter the classic villages, Opusa, Oreiro, Cambelas, and Deportes.
The sheer density of these small, quiet hamlets is the story here, isn't it?
It is. After the intensity of Area Flavia, this segment forces you back into the quiet rhythm of rural life. If you imagine this walk, you're moving through these tightly packed stone houses, small farming plots. The sounds are just utterly different from the noise of the N550.
This is the Galicia that time has largely forgotten.
And it acts as a necessary spiritual cleansing before the urban arrival.
And right at the heart of this valley section lies a major spiritual touchstone, the Santuario de Escravitude.
The Santuario, yeah, from the 16th century. It represents a point of deep spiritual solace. It's a place of devotion historically linked to miraculous cures and a natural spring for pilgrims who are physically nearing exhaustion on their final day.
Which they would be.
Oh, for sure. This site is a huge psychological and spiritual landmark.
Yeah.
It offers a moment of rest, reflection before the hardest physical effort of the day.
And what follows the sanctuary seems to be the payoff, right? Our material promises a truly magnificent visual reward here.
Absolutely. Once you pass the Santuario, you gain elevation again, and you are treated to these breathtaking vistas of the lands of Ama and the entire Padrón Valley stretching out behind you.
Wow.
It's the moment you look back and you see the entire path you've traversed over the past hours, maybe even weeks. Then comes the demand. A major, sustained descent that tests the knees and reminds you that the physical journey isn't quite over yet.
That descent leads us right into the final set of traditional villages before the big push. We pass through Anguera de Suso and then O Faramelo. And for the listener who's actually planning this trip, this area is a critical refueling spot.
That's right. The Albergue de Teo is specifically noted as a vital option for rest and preparation. Even though Santiago feels so close, these are the final hours. Energy management is just paramount.
And the old pilgrimage infrastructure is still there, still working.
It is. We continue to see these artifacts that ground the walk in history.
What kind of artifacts stand out in this area that tie modern pilgrims back to the past?
Well, you find small but crucial architectural markers. Just past the midpoint, you pass the Puente sobre el Rio Tinto, which is a 17th century bridge.
Right.
It's not flashy, but it signifies continuous use of this route for centuries.
Right.
Likewise, the Crucero Gótico de Rua de Francos, a Gothic stone, cross-acts as an ancient wayfinding marker and a devotional site. These small, tangible pieces of stone are the connective tissue between you and every pilgrim who has walked this exact path for the last 500 years.
That continuity is just incredible. Okay, so we've been building up to the inevitable climax. We've managed the history of Iria Flavia. We've handled the climbs and descents of the valley. Where does the spiritual adrenaline finally take over?
The spiritual climax arrives at a point known as O Humiadoiro. It's arguably the most famous point on this entire stage. The name is so powerful, it translates literally to the kneeling place.
The humbling place. Why is it called that?
Because this is where traditionally pilgrims would first catch their glimpse of the towers of the Cathedral of Santiago.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that moment. After months of planning, weeks of physical pain, the heat, the rain, the reflection, you reach this specific hill and the goal is finally visible.
The journey is essentially finished right there, emotionally.
Emotionally and spiritually, yes. The materials even state that here, one already breathes Compostela. The exhaustion suddenly transforms into adrenaline and gratitude.
That transition from exhaustion to exaltation must be overwhelming. So once that happens, the job is physical, not spiritual.
Let's talk logistics. How does the path guide you from that moment of triumph into the city center?
Well, the path accesses Santiago first through the district of Arocha, and importantly, it crosses the Ponte Vella. This requires crossing the Rio Sar again.
Oh, bringing that symbolic river back into the narrative one last time.
Exactly, perhaps as a final clean break with the path. From there, you are faced with a fascinating final choice. The materials detail two primary options for the last entry into the historical center.
A very modern choice, it seems. Efficiency versus tradition. Precisely. Option one is the Achupana route. This is often chosen by pilgrims who prioritize modern conveniences. It takes you past landmarks like the Hospital Clínico, the Capilla de Santa Marta, and onto the major road, Calle Rosalía de Castro.
So practical, but maybe less atmospheric.
It is. The alternative, if you want one final dose of historical immersion, is the second option. It's a slightly more involved, but I think far more rewarding historical detour.
And what's that?
It guides you through the historic neighborhood of Conso. If you choose this path, you pass the beautiful Iglesia de Santa Maria de Conso, a 16th century church. But the highlight here is the profound piece of art it holds. A celebrated Christ figure carved by the master sculptor Gregorio Fernandez.
So you get one final, potent, artistic moment of reflection. A reminder of the sacred focus of the journey just before the crowds and the completion rites begin.
It's a powerful incentive. It is a deliberate choice for the visually and spiritually minded pilgrim. You trade a tiny bit of distance for a last moment of historical gravitas.
But no matter which choice you make, modern efficiency or historic immersion, both routes ultimately converge.
They meet at the Plaza de Vigo. And from that point, there are no more choices. You are plunged into the final meters.
Right into the heart of it.
Correct. The path dives straight into the ancient city walls, passing through the entryway known as a Porta Faquera. Then you are immediately onto the famous Rua Franco.
And it's important to note the specifics of the arrival point here.
Yes. For Portuguese Camino pilgrims, the traditional entryway into the cathedral complex is the Praça Pratarias, the square of the silversmiths. That square, with its intricate south facade, is where centuries of Portuguese pilgrims have traditionally been welcomed home.
And as you take those final exhilarating steps, the sources paint a very vivid picture of the modern reality. The Compostelana Rua de Franco is described as perhaps the most animated street in the entire city.
It is a complete sensory shock. You move from the quiet, reflective contemplation of the valleys, the historical quiet of that 5th century necropolis, and the silent moment at Humiladoro, straight into a celebratory, bustling, loud environment.
Restaurants, pilgrims, students, tourists.
Everything. The walk is finished and the celebration just explodes around you. The emotional release has to be massive.
That 24.8-kilometer stage from Padrón to Santiago truly is not just a walk. It's a condensed seminar in Galician history and culture. We've spanned European civilization from a 5th century Suevian necropolis and Roman infrastructure, past legends of Queen Lupa and medieval castles, right up through the literary legacy of Camilo José Cela.
And it ends on a 16th century church with a Gregorio Fernandez Christ. The power of this stage is that it is a physical summary of the whole journey. It forces you to recognize the layering of history. It reminds you that you're participating in a tradition defined by thousands of years of human intention, sacrifice, and myth-making.
That transition from the deepest past to the bustling present is what makes this final leg so unforgettable. So, as you reflect on this final push, and whether you're planning to walk it or are simply curious about it, here is a final thought for you to consider.
You spend the entire morning of this last day walking past deep history and legend, connecting with that quiet, almost mythical past, those physical remnants of Queen Lupa's Castro do Pario. How does the sheer ancient weight of that silence fundamentally change the feeling of arriving at the destination? Does the memory of a 5th century grave make the bustling, animated noise of the Rua de Franco feel more celebratory or perhaps a little more fleeting?
Reflect on that contrast, that literal walk through the layered reality of history, and how it changes the meaning of finally